So for this video, I wanted to try something a little different from usual. Previously, when I do these time-lapse videos, I would just record the entire process, which is anywhere from 2 hours to 24 hours, and then I would speed that up to 6 minutes or so and then overlay some chill background on it, so it's a little bit more appropriate for YouTube. But today I wanted to kind of take this free time to answer some questions that I've been asked over the years since I started posting videos, sort of like a story time. One question that I get asked quite often, and one that relates to this video, is how do I stay focused while I'm drawing? Because I'm always sitting down for long periods of time working on a small portion of a drawing, which can take hours or days. I think this entire eye drawing process took me around 6 hours in total. But just sitting there quietly and doing anything at all for hours on end is a difficult task in itself. Even if we're not talking about creative work like making art or playing an instrument, there are things like doing your homework, checking the internet, watching YouTube, playing games, and many more things that require you to stay still for long periods of time. So what makes some tasks easier to complete than others? I remember I've always loved playing video games. I think it has something to do with me preferring to stay inside rather than going outside and socializing, but I used to be extremely addicted to computer games, and I would be playing it every single chance that I get. If I wasn't at school or sleeping, I would be gaming. Yes, that means sometimes even when I was eating. And a lot of the times, I think to myself now, if I had devoted all that time gaming to something else like learning a new skill or practicing my art, how different would my life be right now? But of course, that's something that I cannot change, and I do acknowledge that gaming was probably something that I needed at that time as a means of escape or entertainment, so it was a big part of my life that, even though I wish it was different from my current position in life, but I think back fondly at it because of the friends that I made and the happy experiences from the time. But what made it so easy to concentrate while I was gaming but so difficult to do other tasks like drawing? I know there are a lot of research out there about it, but for me personally, it was the constant stimulus that I was getting from video games. Those little rushes of adrenaline when you achieve something or get an item that you've been working so hard towards is a feeling that I can't really get often in my normal life. Now, when you compare that to drawing becomes very stale because it's quite the opposite, because there's basically nothing happening for most of the time spent drawing, especially when you're working on an extremely large piece like I am right now, and the sense of accomplishment at the end of the drawing is sometimes lessened because it's not acknowledged by others and it's really only to prove to yourself. So that really begs the question, how does one concentrate while drawing? I have to admit for myself, it is extremely rare that I do get into the flow state where I am 100% focused on drawing and nothing else in the world matters. I'll talk about that a little bit later and how I achieve it, but for the majority of the days, I am just like everyone else. And what I normally do while drawing is to have something playing in the background. Most of the time, that's a TV show, and it has to be a show that I've already watched before, so I know the plot and I can somewhat follow along. Some days when I'm feeling unproductive, I end up spending most of the time looking over at that screen instead of my drawing, so that can definitely be a downside. But this is my primary way of keeping myself focused and engaged while I'm drawing, because without other outside stimulus while I'm drawing, I would end up getting distracted by other things around me, like I would get tired easily or hungry extremely fast even though I just ate 30 minutes ago. Now let's talk about the flow state. I've experienced this a couple times before I knew the official term for it, and the flow state is basically defined by that sense of fluidity between your body and your mind, where you are totally absorbed by and deeply focused on something beyond the point of distraction. Time feels like it has slowed down, your senses are heightened, you are at one with the task at hand. Some people describe this feeling as being in the zone. Since high school, I can vividly remember the number of times I was in this state, and I'll be honest, it doesn't come as often as I'd like. Now, I've never gotten in this state while doing any other tasks other than drawing, so my experiences and my ways to achieve it might be a little bit different from others. But even though it is not something that I can turn on and off whenever I want, there are things that I do to try to get myself in the flow state. But what does the flow state look like for me? Every time this has happened to me, I always had my earbuds in, listening to some random playlist that I'm familiar with on YouTube, whether those are songs from my childhood or just modern pop songs. And drawing feels different from usual. My senses become kind of numb and I get this little euphoric feeling of high where nothing else in the world matters except moving my hands to create strokes for my drawing. If you had asked me what song I listened to 30 seconds ago, I honestly would not be able to tell you, because even though I'm listening to the music and it's changing to new songs every once in a while, I'm more focused on the drawing, and music almost blends into the background and the whole experience melts together. So that's what the flow state feels like for me, and it's a feeling that I absolutely love more than anything else, and something that I'm chasing every single time that I draw. So here are some advice for you to focus on your drawings and get into the flow state. The number one advice above all else is that you have to be interested in what you're doing. If you're in a class and creating art is focused upon you while you'd much rather be outside doing sports, then there's just no way that you can focus. To have the patience required to create a great art piece, you must be interested and, more importantly, invested in what you're doing. Number 2, enjoy the process. This is something that I take a little bit over the top, because for my entire life I've always loved drawing and the end result didn't really matter as much to me. Sometimes I would spend half a year to create a single piece of drawing and then put it away to not be seen for years. Because honestly, the drawing process is what makes me alive as an artist, not necessarily the final image or my message behind that image. You must see each drawing session as enjoyable and rewarding, almost like reading a book where the pages are your journey. You know that you will get there in the end eventually, but during the meantime, you're there to enjoy the process and not reading to get to the end. Number 3, stay disciplined. There are some days where you feel extremely productive, but for the majority of the days, you're not going to be. In fact, most of the time, you'll be feeling the opposite and you'll want nothing to do with drawing. This is where discipline comes in. If I only drew when I feel 100% and great about drawing, then I would probably only draw once or twice a month. You've got to schedule some time for yourself and your creative self to work on your arts and drawing, no matter how you feel. Now, that's not saying to force yourself to do it every single day for hours on end, but at the same time, it's important to give yourself and your mind some space to rest and recover, because burnouts are a real thing. But be disciplined and listen to your body. Lastly, everyone is different. Everything that I've said in this video might apply to the majority of the people, or maybe none of it applies to you, but everyone is different and you need to find what works for you. Experiment with your surroundings. Try a noisy room where you're blasting heavy rock music on your speaker or gentle classical music in your earbuds. Go draw in a public place like a cafe, or do a live drawing session at the museum. Everyone has their own ways of staying focused, and there isn't a single life hack in the world that applies to everyone. So while you're loosely following the guidelines I've put out in this video, feel free to experiment for yourself. Now, I hope that you enjoyed this video of me kind of talking about what helps me focus and what the flow state feels like for me, and kind of going into a general overview of this eye drawing. Right now you can see me putting in the highlights for some of the skin textures and kind of erasing over it, and with the brush or like a kneaded eraser to smudge it a little bit to cover it up as the top layer. This adds a texture of layer which is not necessarily as bright as the highlights, but also not as dark as the darker parts of the skin. And here you can see me putting in some final touches of the eyelashes. This is always like the most satisfying part when you're drawing the eye, to be honest, because you see all the textures that's already done and overlaid on top of each other, and then these final little touches that really brings out the life and what we know the eye to be. And let me know if you guys enjoy this video of me, just doing a full time lapse, kind of speeding that up to YouTube appropriate length, and then doing a voiceover talking about a specific subject. And this drawing is still kind of going on in the background of my daily life. I'm working on it sometimes more than others, and right now I'm at the eyebrows and the skin textures, and it's a little bit more confusing, but I'm getting there. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.